Coming up on Unpacked.
And we landed and they were just like kids, like everywhere, screaming. I don't know how to say, I'm struggling, I don't know what I'm doing. The day you lift that carpet, it's become a mountain.
Did you feel a bit of a sense of relief after doing it?
A part of me really just wanted to drive off that cliff.
What are some of the dangers that you can face when you are a child star? What are some of the challenges that you can face when you come from a broken home? Our guest today answers these questions. Let's unpack. Multi-award-winning director and filmmaker Thabang Moleya's journey to success hasn't been an easy one. Thabang, who hails from Tembisa, Gauteng, entered the television industry when he was just 15 years old as a host of a popular kids' TV show. Since then, Thabang has gone on to become a force to be reckoned with in the film and television industry. He's directed some of South Africa's most popular TV shows and films, but an internal and private battle nearly took it all away. This is Thabang's story. Let's unpack. Thabang, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, today we know you as this famous global director, award-winning, and you're quite out there on social media, but few people know you actually started out as a child star.
Yeah, sure. Child star, you know, the first gig that I did was a TV show called Kilibone, and then Homeland. I think I was probably about like 12.
And you're like 70 now.
You know, so it was, I mean, I didn't even know what I was doing. I think at that age, like, you just like having fun, right? You just go into auditions and, you know, you find out that, you know, you got the part. And I think, you know, I got into the industry at a young age, but I wasn't aware of what I was doing. I was just like, you know, a kid having fun on set more than anything.
You know, from the many conversations I've had with child stars, young entertainers, I myself was a kids' TV presenter and child entertainer, is that you really go in just for the fun. There's no element of, okay, this is the business, this is what we're going to do, even though you might have agents or parents involved.
Yeah.
You go with the intention of, I'm just having fun and enjoying myself.
Yeah.
When did you realize in that journey that actually this is work? What was that moment that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm at work?
It wasn't necessarily a moment of feeling like I was at work. I think it was a moment of realizing, okay, this is serious, you know? Because as well, you know, in the circle, everyone else is young and we're friends and, you know, there's a group of us and we're like, you know, 8, 12 presenters and there's a lot of, so we kind of have like a very, you know, we had a very strong bond and kind of friendship and we grew up together, you know? So you kind of, you know, when you were going to work, it felt like you were gonna go see your friends.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you finished school early. Sometimes you'd even skip the last episode. The last episode.
Period. Last period.
You'd even, you know, you'd even miss the last period of school because like the school knew that you had to leave early because you were doing like a show, you know? So it just felt like you were seeing your friends and it was like a continued conversation from whatever conversation you guys were having last, whether it was about gaming or, you know, seeing each other on the weekend. But I think for me, where it hit, where I was like, this is serious, was when we started doing the road shows, right? And we landed in, you know, I forget where it was. I think maybe it was Kenya or Nigeria. We're doing a road show around Africa. And we landed and they were just like kids, like everywhere, screaming with like, like holding placards with your name on it. And, you know, a lot of the branding as well, they had that. So you'd see your face on like a t-shirt that someone else is wearing. And with people screaming, like kids screaming your name and like wanting for you to sign on their t-shirt or an autograph. I think for me, that was the moment where I was like, okay, like this is serious. This thing is bigger than what I thought it was, you know?
Was that the birth of a certain part of your ego?
I can't say, right? I'm not sure because I think the birth of it happened possibly earlier, right? Like, you know, so you have certain privileges at school, you know, like because you're on a show and the shooting hours are at a specific time, you can leave school early, you know, so like when it's time, so at the end of second break, like I would get picked up and get taken to studio. So I'd miss the last 3 or 4 classes, you know? So there's a sense of like, okay, I can like, you know, like...
I'm a bit more special than
Yeah,
the
I'm a
others.
bit more special, you know what I mean? And then sometimes it'd pick you up a bit later. So you'd be mid-class. And then like the class would, you know, you'd be like, you know, you'd be in history and then it'd be like, Thabang, they're here to pick you up. And you'd be like, okay, let me get my bags. Cheers, guys, you know? And then...
With that air of, bye, guys, enjoy school.
Yeah, exactly, you know? Look, the other side of that is you have to catch up on the classes that you've missed out on. But there's still a sense of like, okay, I'm a little bit more special in a way. Like I get certain privileges that no one else is getting, you know? So, you know, the teachers are a lot more lenient with you. The rules start bending in order to accommodate this career that you're pursuing. And also being at an art school, they encouraged it, right? They were kind of like, well, if you're studying in the field of art and you're already working, it's a good kind of motivation for other kids that are in the school, you know? And then, you know, you get dropped off late and I was at the boarding school, so I'd come back late and then I'd have to catch up on the homework. But there'd always be a sense of, you know, and even with the rules in the morning of like, you have to be up at a specific time, things started becoming a little bit lenient because I was at studio the day before, so I didn't really have to, you know, I'd have a little bit more like room with like the timetable, you know what I mean? So I think the sense of feeling different in some way to other people started at that point in a particular way, you know?
Maybe I'm using the word ego when it's almost like I might be trying to say the birth of a certain monster inside. The monster that says, maybe not all rules apply to me. Maybe I can get away with this because.
Exactly.
And I use the word ego because it's a certain inflated sense of self.
Sure.
So looking back in hindsight now, where do you think the monster began? Because the monster manifested in many different ways in your life.
Man, I think the sense of, you know, so I grew up in Tembisa, right? Born there, raised there for many years before we moved out. But also, like at home, we were the only house in the street that had a VHS machine. You know, so I'd have like, so that was where my birth for like, well, I wouldn't say my birth because my gogo was like a storyteller. She'd always tell us stories before we went to bed, you know? I think that's where like the seed of wanting to be a storyteller came from. But from having access to this VHS machine, like...
Which was a big deal to AMA 2000. I'll watch it. It was a huge deal.
Yeah, like to have a VHS, like it was like, my house was a mini cinema at home, you know? So there'd always be like a sense of like, I always knew that we were better off in some way. You know, I always knew. And it also came from how people treated my father and how he was kind of hailed as someone who was quite respectable in the community. And that like transcends to the family and how the kids get treated, you know? James, you know what I'm saying? So you kind of grow up like embracing or inheriting this kind of thing that your family's doing really well and you're from this kind of specific household. So automatically, you know, you're treated differently or you have to behave in a more respectable manner than like a kid who just doesn't really, who's just being a kid, you know? So I think, you know, those little seeds of like understanding or knowing that like things are not, even though we're all on equal kind of planes, there's something better in a way, or we're in a slightly better situation than everyone else, in a way, you know? But at the same time, we all struggle through the same things in that neighborhood, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have shared publicly that you come from a broken home. What is broken home in your life?
So, you know, I think in some way we've all experienced, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I know in the general kind of DNA of whether it's people that I know or friends that I know, there's always something within a Black family household that's never spoken about, you know, whether it's a parent who's absent because they're either working too hard, or a parent who's an alcoholic, who's abusive physically, or, you know, there'll always be some sort of conflict, you know. And I think that's, you know, we're humans, so we're always going to encounter that in some way, you know. So when I say broken, you know, I come from a very, very loving home. Like, both my parents loved us dearly, and they did the best to provide for us, given the circumstances of raising kids in post-apartheid era, you know. But also things weren't always good, you know, like we have some really good memories and we have some memories where things were really hard, you know.
But we also need to normalize the fact that you can say, I come from a broken home, without it meaning your home didn't have love. Your home didn't have both parents.
Yeah.
People automatically think, oh, your parents were divorced, or you were being abused and no one loved you.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be all inclusive.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I'm stating that, you know, because I think the stigma of broken home is like, oh my God, like what was wrong, you know. But, you know, there was, you know, friction, or, you know, my mom and dad had their own kind of fights, verbal fights. And I think for me, being a child, seeing my dad as a hero and like, you know, someone who spent time with us, taught me how to ride a bicycle, and we have some really, really fond memories, you know. So there's the man that I see as my father, and then there's the man that I see as a husband, right? And sometimes those two people, like, in fact, those are two separate people, right? And seeing him, and it was very hard to reconcile how he was as a husband versus how he was as a father, you know? There was always conflict, because I'm like, but he's such a great dad, you know, but I can see my mom's going through so much pain and so much agony. And I'm also coming from a household where we're not really talking about stuff. Like, something happens, we brush it under the carpet, we move on, it's a new day. And, you know, you deal with those consequences later in life, where sometimes, or for a long time, even now in some moments, my go-to place is to avoid something and not deal with it, you know, because I feel like, you know, it's maybe a way to survive, you know, like I survive by just brushing things under the carpet, you know. But, you know, as you learn in life that, you know, you keep brushing things under the carpet, and suddenly the day you lift that carpet, it's become a mountain, you know.
So with having said all of that, which we know leads to a certain, I would call it sick within your life.
Right.
Others would say this is the start of a type of a cancer, where we learned habits from our parents, whatever toxic behaviors they had at the time, even though they were doing the best that they could. And now people have different ways of finding medicine. So were narcotics your medicine?
You know, my medicine was fun, right? My medicine was going out. My medicine was like, it was just about the escape, right?
Yeah.
And in that escape, I found different things. I found a different group of friends that I hung around with, which, you know, we had great memories, we had great fun. And then, like, along the way of that funness, someone says, yo, has anyone tried this, right?
Ooh.
And then it's like, no, you know, so the interesting thing about that when I look back is that there were all these boundary lines that, like, that I would have, you know? So my boundary was like, okay, I'm only gonna party on a Friday and Saturday, and Sunday I'm gonna chill out and recover, right? So that's a boundary line. And then suddenly there's like Puza Thursday, right? It's like, oh man, but drinks aren't special, right? So then it's like, okay, now I can start drinking on Thursday, right? So your boundary lines are drawn in sand, right? So now it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? Then like Sunday, it's like a braai at someone's house. And then it's like, now it's like 4 days, between 7 days. And then in a week, I'm spending 2 days to recover. And in between that, there's all these moments of like escape and like having fun. And some of it was good, but then like, you know, it was almost like you're chasing something, right? And then once you catch it, you wanna like elevate that, right? So in rehab, one of the terms that I learned was that you chase the first high. You know, you chase the first
dragon.
Yeah, you chase the first high that you felt when you felt that high, right? And you'll never get that high ever again. Like you'll never there was a certain feeling that you got when you've had your Jaeger bomb, and with that combination and that feeling, suddenly instead of needing one Jaeger bomb, you need two Jaeger bombs to feel the effect. Suddenly you need three, suddenly you're hitting a bottle. Suddenly, whether that's leading to other narcotics, suddenly it's one bag a night, then it's two bags, and then suddenly it's like all these boundaries and all these like limitations that you drew in the sand suddenly disappear because you're chasing that first high, you're chasing that first experience that you had, and you'll never get it. But by the time you realize that, you're so far down the hole that like you don't even know you're in a hole.
Yeah. What I find so interesting is the word you use, which is escape.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what storytelling and the work that you do is.
Right.
So it's interesting
Sure.
that the two words that came to my mind were like, Thabang is an escape artist. He just sometimes, created art, and other times maybe a bit of a mess. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, look, I think, what's interesting about the form of storytelling is like you're escaping to also tell a story in its most authentic and genuine way.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that someone's going to resonate with it, right? But a part of me, so I don't really, in order for me, if I'm making a movie or if I'm making a commercial or if I'm working on a telenovela, I can't escape any, like, I need to feel everything that's around me, right? I need to be completely present in the moment of what I'm creating in order for me to truly be like at my peak of creating whatever it is, no matter the duration of it, So I'm not necessarily, I think for me, why I've become a stronger storyteller as I've grown older is that I've learned to embrace the moments of feeling the experience of now.
Yeah.
Does
that include you getting more comfortable sitting in discomfort, the type of discomfort that actually drove you to chasing fun?
Yeah. That's something that, I completely hate it. I hate the term sit with it,
It still sucks though, even though you know why you gotta do it. It still sucks.
It's like, now it's, there's different outlets, right? So it's been a very long week. I'm completely exhausted, but I know I can't go out, and if I go out, I'm gonna go out to have a meal. And even if I'm surrounded by friends, I monitor the conversation, not to say I'm monitoring it, but you feel the energy, You feel the energy, you're like, okay, cool, the homies are drunk now, I can leave. I'm no longer afraid of being in this company of friends that are drinking, but I know when to leave.
Yeah.
And that's always been something where I'm like, no one's gonna remember the rest of the conversations that we're having right now. And I'm at
also,
a point
it's not
where,
fun for you.
Yeah, it's not fun for me.
After a certain part where everyone's having fun and you're like...
There's only so much water I can drink,
Yes.
And there's only so many cappuccinos I can have, So for me, it's like being self-aware and being able to sit through discomfort and also being able to surround myself with people that are okay with that, So a lot of people have also kind of, not being able to sit through discomfort, not being able to go through those. I can't expect, whether it's a life partner or friends that are close to me, to go through the same journey that I have been through. You know what I mean? So, and I need to show empathy for those that, if your survival instinct is to run, I can't keep you if you kind of feel like you have to run. I can't,
Did you also, and do you also struggle with naming things? Like, other than sitting with your feelings, calling them exactly what they are, considering your background consisted of sweeping things under the carpet and not speaking about them?
Well, I think the thing about it is what I'm able to do is ask myself the questions, right? So if I receive a phone call or if I wake up and I feel discomfort, I kind of ask myself, okay, and usually it's rooted in fear.
Yes.
Right? It's like, it always like boils down to a fear. And the second thing is that it's usually something that I'm not in control of.
Yeah.
Right? And that's ultimately what makes me scared. So I wake up, so I might be like, whatever I'm doing in the house before I leave, I'm like, but why am I feeling so anxious? Then I'll stop and I'll ask myself, okay, I'm feeling anxious because it's the 25th and I know that there's something that I need to do financially to contribute to X, Y, and Z, and I feel like I might have a shortfall before I get to the end of the month. Okay, I'm worried about that. What can I do? Is there anything I can do in this moment to alleviate that? No, there's nothing, because I've pitched on several projects. So I kind of come down to try and answer the question of what's making me feel anxious in that moment.
got you.
You know what I mean?
I got
And
you.
then when I get to the root of it, either it's something that I can change, or it's either something that's completely out of my control,
yeah.
right? And those are the things that I'm like, okay, I need to surrender this, right? Because you know, like surrender is like a practice that I do in moments, right? Like I'm like, okay, like I've done something, I'm putting it out there, like, God, it's in your hands. Then as I throw it into the fire and I say, God, it's in your hands, I'm like, wait, but I'm not sure if you're gonna pull through, so let me just like...
You're such a
but it's already-
perfectionist,
you
like
know what I
me.
mean?
I
Like,
resonate.
you know?
That completely like connects, because also we're in production.
Yeah.
You know, we create, like you say, we create stories, narratives. And
Right.
if we didn't have deadlines, we'd be perfecting until kingdom come.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
we have to learn the art of letting go of
Yeah,
something.
yeah. And we work in an industry where, if anything, we need to be in control of every single aspect, right? And that's part of what being able to execute a successful production is. You need to be in control of everything, logistically to execution. But we also live in a world where you can't control everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the juxtaposition to life and what we do.
What was your rock bottom?
You know, it's funny, one term that I also learned in rehab is that rock bottom has a basement.
Yeah.
So when you think you're at rock bottom, then there's another level there that, you know, there's a basement to that rock bottom, you know?
You must watch a film called The Platform.
Okay.
It's about rock bottom having
A basement. Okay, I'll check it out. I will. I think for me, I was in denial about where I was for a very long time. I kind of masked, you know, being a very young, successful director at the time that I was. I had a lot of work on my plate. Like I was running from, like in 1 year, I'd shot 4 productions. Like I directed 4 dramas in 1 year. So I was on set shooting something with the PA from another production dropping off scripts that I had to sign for. And while I was shooting that production at lunchtime, I was reading for the next production and making notes for. So I kind of, growing up, I kind of in my mid-20s had this whole like hustle till we die mentality, which is not a bad mentality to have, the drive to work really hard. And I felt that I had to keep myself going with certain substances, like whether it was stuff to help me like not sleep at night or what I believed would make me more efficient or sharper, you know?
Yeah.
And also I think growing up and seeing how this industry kind of portrayed the rock and roll lifestyle and like the excessiveness in substances, like I felt that that was part of the dressing of what a young, successful filmmaker or director was, you know?
Yeah.
So I think for me, when I was on the last production in Cape Town and I just done 4 that year and I was completely zoned out. Like I was a zombie on set. I didn't know.
Probably burnt out.
I was completely burnt out.
Yeah.
I was completely exhausted. Like spiritually, I was bankrupt and I was just spent, you know? And I was, you know, and I drove to Signal Hill. I drove to the top of Signal Hill in Cape Town, and I was just like, a part of me really just wanted to drive off that cliff. Like I was just like, I want to drive off this cliff, you know? And I got home in the apartment that I was staying at, and I ended up in hospital that night, completely exhausted, burned out, with the doctor trying to stitch up my wrists because I'd cut them in the kitchen. And I was just like, I didn't want, it was, I don't think I was trying to kill myself, but I also think I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to say, I'm struggling, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what to do, and I don't know like who to ask for help. So I was trying to get someone's attention.
Can I ask, I would say it's a tough question just in the sense that maybe many people are not familiar with what you just said about, you know, people say, you'll get those who say, But if you're trying to kill yourself, you should have just done this.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to do it, you would have done it.
Yeah.
And the others were like, he's just looking for attention.
Yeah.
Did you get the release and the relief of what you had burning inside of you by doing that? Did you feel a bit of a sense of relief after doing it?
No, not really, because I still wasn't willing to be honest about it. Wasn't, even though I got the attention of like, oh, all I got was the attention that I felt like people were concerned about my well-being. But even in that, when people said, what's wrong? I was like, no, I'm overworked. I'm under pressure, you know what I mean? So I think like one thing I've learned is that the second I was able to be honest with myself and say, I need help, you know, that's when I was on the journey to recovery, or the journey to learning that it's okay to also say I'm not okay.
Yeah.
You know, and it's okay to be vulnerable and say, yo, I'm struggling, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm scared, and like, you know, because, you know, I don't, you know, growing up, like, you know, even till this day, like, masculinity, being a boy, being a man, growing up, and that transition has no kind of room for vulnerability in any way, you know? So I think when you grow up, you know, with all this tension, it manifests itself in other ways, you know? So I think if I didn't end up being a substance abuser, I would have probably been an abusive partner, right? Because it needs an outlet, right? So if it doesn't have an outlet, then it explodes. But ultimately, someone needs to feel the wrath of a young boy who feels like he's got no one to talk to, who feels like it's weak to cry, I'm not man enough, and that's not what men do. And I honestly believe that's part of the root of gender-based violence, is because men don't know where that outlet is, and they take that frustration home, and ultimately someone in the household, whether it's the wife or the kids, feel that consequence.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's a pity. I do believe that in many situations, men are the biggest victims of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And it manifests, like what you say, into other things where now there are other victims. But I'm thinking to myself, you said I needed help. You needed help for?
Substance abuse. Yeah, I needed help for substance abuse.
Did you know that at the time?
No.
Or were you just saying, I need help?
No, I didn't know. Like, I had an intervention. Like, my family rocked up at my apartment and they were like, yo, we've checked you into rehab. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go to rehab. I was like, rehab? Come on, guys, I'm on a shoot, you know? And they were like, no. And I didn't know that, like, everyone had been communicating. Like, my mom was speaking to my boss at the time, and then my boss was like, no, we'll give him as much time off as he needs, and when he comes back, like, he'll still have a job, you know? So everyone had communicated, and I was just like, and even then, I still I did rehab for, I did primary care, which is a month, and then secondary care.
As in a month, you are full-time living in the rehab facility?
Yeah.
No phone, no visitors?
No phone, you can have visitors in your third weekend.
After 21 days?
Yeah, you can start having visitors. So I did that for a full month, and then I moved into secondary care. And secondary care was about 3 months.
And secondary care, is that the one where you are in and out?
No, you still stay completely on the facility, but now you start seeing counselors.
I got you.
You start seeing counselors. Well, you're seeing counselors in primary care, but it's more intensive work now. It's like your childhood, growing up. So you think you're going in to be like, okay, like, I thought I was going in to be like, okay, I just need to like appease people and people, you know, calm down, you know? But I only think it probably sunk in like month 4, where I was like, okay, like, this is like, because you're surrounded by different people. You're surrounded by a man who's 70 years old and he's completely lost everything. You're surrounded by, you know, people your age, people younger, and everyone's got different stories. But ultimately, you see the common thread in the behavior of like the escape, or not being honest, or being, you know, so even though everyone's story is completely different, there's a lot of similarities in how in the decisions we made to deal with problems, you know?
Absolute worst moment in rehab, which I will assume was the penny dropping for you about like, okay, wow, I actually have a problem.
You know, I think when I was in rehab, it felt safe.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what was painful was looking back at people that I'd hurt along the way, you know, and realizing like the pain I'd caused my family, my sister, my mom especially, you know. But I mean, without their love and support, I wouldn't have made it through. But I think in that, when you're going through the work, because you're writing, you're doing a lot of like journaling of what happened, right? And like you start writing. So, you know, one of the exercises is write 100 consequences of your behavior.
Wow.
And you're like, 100? How are you even gonna get to 100? But let me tell you, start writing.
Ooh,
then
I
you're
think that's
like-
an exercise everyone must do.
Right? Because then
Yeah.
you start going, like once you're complete, because you firstly, when you're given that task, you're like, there's no way there's 100, right? But you start writing from the littlest things. Like a little consequence is, okay, I went out on Sunday night, Monday I was late for a meeting. It's a consequence,
Yeah.
right? So you start writing that down, and then they get more extreme, right? You're like, okay, went out, roadblock, cop stopped me. It's a consequence, right? Like you don't realize it, but when you start writing down the things that you remember, other things that you think you've forgotten start coming up.
What was your heaviest consequence on your list?
Sure, there's quite a few here, but I think ending up in hospital was one of the, I mean, in this moment right now, that's what I can think of.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
My mom, like my mom and I are really close, you know, and I think seeing her, I think when my mom knew that I had a problem, like that moment when she looked at me and she was like, you need help, right? And I could see the pain in her eyes. Like, I'll never forget that. Because I remember just looking at my mom and going, feel like I had no feeling towards what she was going through. I was so out of touch with who I was that I had no empathy for what she was saying to me. She was like, you're out of touch. And I was just like, she's like, I need help. And I didn't care. So I think when I look at, those are the two consequences where, you know, you never want to hurt people that care for you and would do anything for you.
Yeah.
And I think for me, those are the biggest regrets of my past or my addiction rather, you know.
Recovery, as many people know, let me not say we all know, is an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
What are the things that happen in your life that drive you to realizing, I'm skirting too close to the edge and playing with my recovery?
When I feel under pressure, I'm very good at multitasking multiple projects, but when I make very clumsy mistakes, when I start being very forgetful, then it means I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And for me, exhaustion is a very big flag for me.
Yes.
Like, because I kind of want to escape and just
Yeah.
be like, I need the world to leave me alone. So exhaustion is so I kind of make sure that on weekends, either I'm resting, seeing my family, or I'm in the gym. Those are my outlets. Those are my 3 outlets, you know. And also for me, another red flag is when I do things that I can get away with without anyone calling me out.
Ooh.
And I'll give you a very simple example, right? When I'm driving and I've got like an empty can of an energy drink, and if I open my window to throw that can out, right? Or if I take a piece of paper that's like litter and I throw it out my car while I'm driving, that's a red flag for me.
Wow.
Because I'll tell you why. The thing is, I'm doing something and I think I can get away with it. And no one can stop me to say, like, don't do that. That's not cool.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think what makes it important is surrounding yourself with the right people.
The
people that already know when that's a flag or I should be calling this out.
Yeah.
Okay. So where's Thabang today?
I'm here with you.
Best answer. How many years sober and where do you find yourself in life today?
So May the 10th is my sobriety birthday. So this year I turned 9 years. Next year will be my 10-year.
Wow, that's huge.
It's like, it feels like yesterday I was checking into rehab. So it's 10 years of, you know, no substances, not a drink, not a drop of alcohol in my system. And I'm feeling like alive and present, and I feel like I'm being the best version of myself, not even in every day, but every moment. I try and experience my moments, you know?
Do your substances include medication? And I asked this specifically. I have a friend who had to go in for an op.
Right.
She's in recovery, has been sober for over 10 years, crack and heroin, but she will not even have a painkiller. So for her op, like the moment they were done with the anesthesia and everything, not a single thing.
Yeah, I know. It's, you know, that's the thing is, unfortunately, I haven't been in this situation where I've needed an operation, been in recovery, but I've heard from people, and I've heard even with friends that have been in like accidents that are in recovery, and the medic comes up and they're like, I need to give you anesthesia, and they go, no.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
So, you know, I do know that like medications also, you know, painkillers, you know, and it's the little things, right? Where like, you know, you can get them over the counter. It's just too much of anything that kind of makes you escape the moment of being in the moment.
Yeah.
That's what becomes addictive.
Then when it comes to addiction in general, some people recover from one, switch to another.
Yes.
Do you ever find yourself picking up addiction to work, addiction to sex, addiction to any other behaviors or anything else?
You know, I do try, and because, you know, you cross addict to certain things, right? I know for sure that I'm a workaholic. Like, I really do know that because I know what it feels like to grow up when, you know, I lost my father at a young age, and when that happened, like the banks descended and completely wiped us out, you know? So I never want my family to experience that. And I know that's part of why I work so hard, you know? And also for me, like work just keeps me out of trouble. Like it keeps me from the streets. It keeps me from being in places where I don't need to be, you know?
But what if work is trouble?
How?
You say work keeps you out of trouble. What if work becomes the trouble?
It can
because
be.
in the case of you, your situations have been being overworked.
Yeah. It can be. So it's, you know, it's having, as you said, having a support structure around you that can say, hey, you're working too hard or you need to rest. Going and seeing family. Like after this interview, I'm going to go home to my family, to my mom and my sister, and spend time with them, you know. So yeah, it does. It's always important to stay vigilant of like, even in relationships, you know, to be like, you know, okay, I was in a relationship, it only lasted 6 months and I really like someone else. Okay, I can't just hop from a relationship to the next relationship, you know, because that's also part of like, it can become, you know, you can become a relationship.
Love addict, I think
love
they
addict,
call it,
right? Yeah, they call it a love addict, you know. So yeah, it's just, you know, I think for me, it's like, we call it baby steps and one step at a time, you know, because one can also feel overwhelmed and I find that I can also put too much pressure on myself, you know.
Final words, learnings from your journey.
That it's okay to talk about things, that as family, as friends, we need to talk more to, you know, I would encourage parents to talk to their kids.
Yeah.
And to be open with them and to allow them the platform to just express how they're feeling. That it's okay to not always be strong, that it's okay to feel weak, it's okay to cry. And it's just okay to be vulnerable, and that like this life thing, we're all just figuring it out, and we don't always need to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And we don't have to put pressure on ourselves. Like social media becomes a huge pressure for us growing up, and the want and the desire to have things. And that just find inner peace, like, and that happens daily. Like, just be okay in the moment with the little, even though it seems little with what you have.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with aspiring for more, but don't put pressure on yourself because you'll never enjoy the moment of the now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Thabang. I really appreciate you coming to share the story. I mean, we met many, many years ago, but it's amazing to see how your journey has progressed, not just your success. And of course, everybody will go to your socials and see the amazing work that Thabang is doing, but just your personal journey and your growth, the fact that you're able to come to the space and be honest and real about what some would consider weak and what some would consider you shouldn't be sharing that in public. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hashtag Unpacked with Relebogile. Do join in on the conversations, especially when we're speaking about addiction, which we know is quite a serious thing. Addiction is not just restricted to substances, is not restricted to what you might think it is. So we'll post the details of where you can get in touch with help, for help. But more importantly, what Thabang said, just to resonate with that, don't be afraid to ask for help. Stay present, be in the moment, and know you are not weak. It's okay to be vulnerable, especially if you're a man. Thank you for joining us. Good night. Next time on Unpacked, you are striving for a certain physical perfection.
Yeah, for me, not for people.
yourself.
Not for people.
Yes.
No,
That's
I
what I
don't
was
live for
gonna
people.
ask.
I live for me.
Why is it important for you to be memorable? Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. New episodes weekdays at 5:30 p.m. on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Television edited broadcasts weekdays at 5 p.m. Open up to S3.